Oh, let's see. Okay.
I'm gonna do this. Any better? Just
Okay. Well, then we can see, but
Oh, okay.
it's that right there.
All right, welcome everybody. I'd like to call the April 8th, 2021 regular Des Moines City Council meeting to order. And will Councilmember Nutting please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You'll need to unmute. There you go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which it
stands,
stands, one nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please let the record show that all council members are present. Is there any correspondence from the public?
Yes, Mayor, we received a letter from Tim and Cheryl Jocelyn relative to problems on Redondo Beach Drive, and the following have provided written public comment. Susan Sparrowhawk, City Council meetings, Steve Johnson, Redondo Remodel, Olivia Carter, Mason Home, Rick Johnson, pay or not to pay. And that concludes correspondence and written public comment, and no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you. Okay. Managing the feedback tonight as best we can, folks. Okay, since there are no one has signed up to speak, that will take us forward to the city manager's report. And I will turn the microphone over to Michael Mathias.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Couple of items today. One thing that's a great pleasure to report is that the city participated in the Association of Washington Cities Wellness campaign. And the person responsible for that within the city with coordinating that was Tara Keene, who we greatly appreciate her efforts. And the outcome of that was if there's more than 50% participation, there's a 2% reduction in healthcare premiums. So that was something that the city did for itself and through its employees. So we're very pleased with that. Secondly, I'd like to introduce both Dan Brewer and Scott Wilkins. We have our consultant, Mark Bunzel, here, and they're going to talk about the phase 2 Marina study. Dan, take it away.
All right, good evening, Council, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to give an update on the Marina Master Plan work that we've been doing for a while now. We have folks here from the Wagner Marine Group that are going to give a presentation on the Phase 2 report as well. And that's the primary focus of our meeting tonight. But I also want to just give an overview very briefly of kind of the master plan work and how the phase 2 report that you're going to hear about tonight kind of fits into that. And then after Mark presents his report, I'll briefly talk about schedule and next steps of what you can expect in the coming months. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had some questions about just what is the master plan. So I thought I'd just really quickly describe this. It's a long-range planning tool. Each of our departments, our major departments, have master plans or comprehensive plans that they look at for long-range planning. They establish visions and action plans based on goals for the future of the marina. It's our plan that, and typically what we'll do is update our master plans every 5 years. We'll kind of tune them up to make sure that the assumptions are still accurate. So as we're making investments into the marina, that we're still on the right course. Typically, we update master plans like this once every 10 years. So the next time we would do this is in early 2030s. Once we have the master plan completed for the marina, it'll be adopted as part of the city's comprehensive plan. And the basis of the master plan is that it'll establish the relative priorities for the marina improvement plan. Just like with some of our other departments, we have 6-year capital improvement plans that we do every year, where each year we update and reprioritize projects based on current needs and assessments. And so the very first plan out of the gate will be based on the master planning work, and then every year those project priorities get updated annually. And then ultimately it funnels down to the annual capital improvement project budget for project selections for the marina. We've been working on the Marina Master Plan for quite some time now. To be perfectly honest, we had hoped to be at this point about a year ago when COVID hit. So a lot of the work we were working on with the Marina Master Plan had to be put on pause as we were dealing with the COVID. And so, but that doesn't mean we haven't been doing anything. You can see here a lot of different meetings that we've had with representatives of the DMMA, other marina stakeholders. Mark had completed and presented his phase 1 report some time ago. As you know, we've already been doing some work with Robert Holmes on the marina redevelopment, and there'll be more on that coming. We've also had several studies we've done on passenger-only ferry service. We've done some geotechnical work with KPFF, and most recently, we completed a condition assessment report of the marina infrastructure. This year, we've had several meetings with the Municipal Facility Committee on the master planning update. And so far, some of the things that we've talked about with the committee have been review and discussion of the various zones, in particular, what is in the marina zone and what is in the waterfront zone. And I've got a graphic next that'll show you more on that. But then we reviewed the condition assessment report from Reed Middleton. And from that, we prepared and presented an initial draft of a marina improvement plan. And there's more work to do on that yet, but we at least we have a draft started for that. Most recently, we introduced and talked about 4 policy issues, and you're going to hear more about these tonight when Mark presents his report. Issues with covered moorage, slip sizes, potential dry stack storage for boats, and then reconstruction of the dry sheds into a multi-purpose type structure. And then we're preparing to proceed with architectural and engineering services on some of the dock replacements. Scott and I were working on a RFQ for some of the dock replacements even this afternoon, and you'll hear more about that soon here. So this graphic, we've been trying to show this just about at every presentation that we've given to really help define what is the marina and what is the waterfront zone. So everything that you see that's in blue is the marina. They're marina assets and liabilities. So it's not just the docks, it's also the southern portion of the parking lot, the CSR boatyard, the dry sheds, the harbor master office location. All of that, is part of the marina, and it's an enterprise fund, and it's run like a private business as far as the accounting, the city in the city's accounting system. The waterfront zone is what you see in orange. This is the north parking lot, the fishing pier, the north bulkhead project that Andrew's been working on. That's part of the waterfront zone. And although it's not shown on this graphic, the beach park and Van Gasken Park are also part of that waterfront zone. So any activities that occur in those areas are general funded activities, not paid for by the marina. This is a busy slide here, but this is just one element of the condition assessment report that we recently had completed with Reed Middleton. You know, our staff had a pretty good idea of the condition of the docks, but we wanted to get a third party to come in and verify that what we were seeing, it was accurate. And so Reed Middleton came in and they looked at each and every dock and all of the facilities on each of the docks, and they gave them a rating from good to satisfactory, poor, fair, or poor. And thank goodness we didn't have anything in the serious and critical category. But the conclusion is that most of the docks and most of the infrastructure is in the fair to poor condition. And so when you look at what's described here, advanced deterioration needs to be expedited with moderate urgency. So the time has passed for us to begin to replace some of the infrastructure down there. We need to get started on doing that. So based on that report, we initially kind of broke some of the projects down into 3 tiers or 3 categories. And just to kind of give us a relative priority, that was earlier in the year. And then since then, we've begun to refine that into more of a traditional improvement plan. You're probably familiar with this kind of a spreadsheet. We use this on other departments. The idea is that we will list every project that needs to happen in the marina and we'll prioritize them. Eventually, we'll have some cost numbers in here and programming years so that you can, the council, you can, with the public's input, can help us to prioritize the reinvestments in the marina. So you'll see this being further developed in the months to come. So Tonight, after this, we're gonna have Mark give his presentation on the phase 2 report. I wanted to just give a schedule of what we plan to do with this report. Tonight, it's obviously the council presentation. Next week, we have a meeting scheduled with the DMMA, Marina tenants, and other stakeholders next on the 14th from 5:30 to 6:30. All of the reports and presentations that we've given so far are available on the Marina's webpage. And we're collecting comments on this phase 2 report via this email address. And that's available on the Marina's webpage. And any comments that we get prior to the 12th next week, we will do our best to kind of collate those into groupings. And as part of our presentation next week, we'll try to respond to as many of the most common questions or feedback that we get on the report so far. It doesn't mean that the 12th is the end of the comment period. We'll take comments, all the way through the master planning work, but we do have this meeting scheduled next week. We will update the Municipal Facility Committee on the 22nd based on some of the feedback that we've gotten on the report to date. And we plan to come back to the council in early May with any revisions or modifications to the report that are needed based on some of the feedback that we've gotten. So with that, I want to introduce and turn this over to Mark Bunzel. Mark Bunzel is part of the Wagner Marina Services. He will present the phase 2 report, and Leonard and Lorna Landon are here as well. So Mark, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can take it away. Mark, can you hear me? Okay.
You there, Mark?
Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I am. I just connected in.
Thank you.
Mark, why don't you go ahead and
Thanks,
start your report? Or
Okay, and Leonard and Marina, if you'll bring the slides up, please.
We're here. You ready for me to share screen, Mark?
Yes, yes.
Yes, go right ahead. First of all, thank you all very much. We appreciate this opportunity to present our work for the last year, and been a very exciting project to learn about the Des Moines Marina and the many attributes and assets that it has, and to offer you our recommendations for the future. The Marina, and next slide, please. We've prepared the study, the assessment recommendations for the function, purpose, and the identity for the future of the Des Moines Marina. Next slide. So the goals of the study will be to determine the best mix of slips. The market has changed. The type of boats that have changed are part of the market, and we found some very interesting trends in there that we'll show you in a few moments. We also wanted to determine the potential upland amenities that would be appropriate for the marina for the future to make it more attractive, not just for visiting boaters, but also for visitors who would like to come down and enjoy the marina, residents of Des Moines and visitors from outside the area. With that, we also wanted to determine potential sources of revenue in addition to the marina slips. And we wanted to create a fun boating experience, which is something we know. For those of you not familiar with our firm, we visit some 300 marinas a year between Olympia and Ketchikan, Alaska, and in through Southeast Alaska. So we know what works and what doesn't work, and we know the boating community. We also wanted to work with you to initiate a long-term plan for the redevelopment of the marina and the marina floor, the space above the docks. Next slide. Well, the marina is 50 years old and has served a good life for Des Moines. The docks are nearing the end of their life. We recommended hiring Reed Middleton, who actually was the consulting firm and design firm that built the original marina, to survey the docks and to look at them and give us a good view on how much time is actually left. And in their assessment, which is available on the website, there's about 7 to 12 years left. And what that means is the docks are deteriorating, the bulkhead is failing and needs replacement. In deferred construction, we could defer it, but it's going to mean higher cost, not just due to the cost of repair and maintenance, but also the cost of construction inflation. I think we've all been shocked by just what a simple sheet of plywood now costs compared to a year and 2 years ago. We're going through a boom, and that's going to increase costs. Also, the dock materials that the marina was originally built on are no longer environmentally acceptable. For example, many of the pilings are coated with creosote, and that's not accepted. Foam flotation under the docks begins to break apart, and the foam material is not acceptable also. So a new rebuild will need to include dock materials that are more environmentally acceptable. And this last point, permitting is now requiring an ample lead time. And this lead time, every time we check on it, seems to be increasing. We've heard stories of 5 years or more just for permitting time. And that's a concern with the 7 to 12 years left on the dock. Next slide. The other thing our study found is that the dock configuration is not optimal. And the marina is actually losing money on the smaller slips. And smaller slips, and we're going to show you a breakdown of this in a few moments, but the smaller slips are 20, 24-foot, and 28-foot slips. Slightly more than 479 of the marina's 730 slips are 28 feet and under. And therefore, they're part of this category that you'll see is losing money. Moorage demand right now in Puget Sound is higher for larger slips, and we see multi-year waiting lists for 34 to 60 feet, not just at Des Moines, but at many of the major marinas around the Puget Sound area. Des Moines is currently slightly below market rates, while demand is high for moorage. We'll show you that in a few moments also. And we're recommending a review of the policy and practices for establishing moorage rates to move to basing it on market rates and not based on the previous of CPI. And currently this is in the city code, and this is something that there should be a bit more flexibility to allow those changes. The Des Moines slip revenue in 2020, we saw that covered moorage 30 feet and larger operated at or above 100%. Slips 28 feet and under operated at 81% to 94% of capacity. Open moorage slips 28 feet and larger did operate at or above 100%, and open slips 28 feet and under operated at 64 to 84%. So that definitely showed us that these smaller slips are not the right combination for Des Moines going forward when we're looking at a rebuild. Next slide. So right now, this is the revenue mix of slips for 2018, 2019, and 2020. And then we did some estimates of what this would be for a future rebuild. And what we're looking at is the number of slips going down to eliminate or change some of these smaller slips to larger slips to get closer into that sweet spot of the market. Okay, so you can see here that we're estimating the rebuild configuration will generate about 3.89 million per year with 532 slips. So a little bit higher revenue with less slips. And we're estimating this right now at 40% covered moorage and 60% open moorage. And part of the reason for this is we're going to be talking about is covered moorage cost about 80% to more than likely about 100% more than open moorage. And when you look at the slips in the Puget Sound area, most of the marinas are now going towards open moorage. In general, you just can't afford to do covered moorage. So the covered moorage of Des Moines has to be carefully looked at to see if this is appropriate for the future. Now, we're also going to be recommending that the dry storage area, which is now in the center of the marina, and is the older sheds that are there, are not really optimal. And dry storage now, generally across the industry, have moved to stacked storage, heated storage, but where boats are stacked rather than the current buildings, which are 1 story high. So we're looking at a design that can actually do that. You'll also see numbers for guest moorage and the number of slips and storage spaces, which we see coming down from 840 to 810. But we see if this is done with the dry storage, we have the opportunity to increase the revenue for slip storage, mainly due to the dry storage, from 3.42 million today to 4.44 million in the future. So next slide, please. The challenge is this is not something that can be done overnight. The rebuild process will need to be done in phases to manage the costs and also due to the construction. So we're looking at a plan that will be developed that will basically rebuild 3 docks per season. We see the total cost of the marina costing a shocking number of 30 to 50 million, depending on the timing of the dock replacement and the decision versus open versus covered moorage. Covered slips versus uncovered slips, as I've said, will dramatically affect the cost. And we have this as an open question, whether Des Moines for the future can afford covered moorage. And we believe that this is going to have to be put to the public, and we're going to have to survey them and actually have the people commit to covered moorage before it's built because of that high cost of providing that luxury of covered moorage. Today, the additional challenge is there's currently insufficient funds for a complete rebuild of the docks and the infrastructure. So right now, we're looking at a situation where there is potentially $7 million of bond debt handled by the city that's going to be retired, and a potential to reinstate that bond debt and utilize that $7 million to begin this rebuild of the marina. But as we've said, at a $30 to $50 million level, this will only allow us to do 3 to 4 docks and other infrastructure. And we may have to be looking at a plan where we have to fund the future rebuild, continued rebuild out of marina revenues. And at worst case, that could require 20 years or more during this rebuild process. So that is a definite challenge. Next slide, please. We see one of the opportunities is dry storage, and this can assist with the logistics, because what we've said previously is that the 20-foot, 24-foot, and 28-foot slips really don't make economic sense. Yet we have customers who have boats of that size and would like that. And what other marinas have done is they've built dry storage to accommodate those boats of 30 feet and under. And we're looking at that as an opportunity. As a case example, we looked across the marinas that have done dry storage, and their dry storage facilities are fully occupied. They're typically profitable, and the customers are very happy with the results. Dry stack storage is a good utilization of valuable space on the marina floor above the marina, where the boats can be quickly moved into the water. Next slide. So the existing storage sheds, there are currently 72 of them, and they handle boats up to 20 feet and other people's other boating gear. The sheds are old. Many of you have looked at them. They occupy a great deal of space on the marina grounds. And when we analyzed it, we noted that the rental rates for these sheds are comparable to car storage sheds inland. In other words, there's no premium for a dry storage shed that's conveniently located within the marina. And we think that's unfortunate, because there should be a premium for that. Next slide. The marina rebuild process is a multi-step process. First step is a complete replacement of the seawall, which has already been discussed, planned, is in the process of being permitted, and needs to start fairly quickly before the docks can be done. We're recommending that docks M and N begin as a start. And we want to point out that the new standards for the building of marina docks is to allow for more light transmission. For those docks that are being built over lands managed by the state Department of Natural Resources, they're insisting on more light transmission for the fish below the docks and to help them to be able to feed the whales and other parts of the ecosystem. We also want to point out that permitting, mitigation costs, which have been going up, and construction costs for covered moorage, as I said earlier, may just be too high when we go through the next step of designing the marina and putting it out for bid for actual cost. And this may require the decision to go with all open moorage, or those tenants who are looking for and really insisting on covered moorage, marina rates may have to go up to compensate for that higher cost of building those docks. By the way, part of the reason for why these docks cost more is they require not just the building of the roof structure above, but finger piers on both sides to hold up those docks, and you can see that in the marina today. We also see next, after M and N dock, moving down to D dock, closer to Anthony's, and to reposition that dock to set up a secondary launch area down in that corner and a wider fairway. So what you're going to see in our projected design is removing docks to basically put in more slips that will be larger for that sweet spot that we'll show you in a few moments. But that also requires more aisleway space. We call it fairway, for a boat to come out of its slip and actually turn the corner to go out into the sound. So that's part of this process. The standards have changed for electrical power on docks to something called ELCI. And mainly this is a protection circuitry that makes sure that current does not go into the water and harm people or wildlife. So they all have to be built to a new standard, new dock boxes that support ELCI protected power. So the reconfigured docks with 30 feet and larger slips will generate the same and maybe a tiny little bit more revenue. So by reducing the number of docks, we can actually be more profitable, more optimal, and service those larger boats. Next slide, please. So this is what this looks like. So today, if you look at, and focus on the slip length in the number of feet and also those percentages over on the left of this table. And as you can see, the marina is 26% of the marina is supporting 24-foot slips, 34% 28-foot slips. But when we start to get to where the market has actually gone, look at what we're on single digits. So we get up to 10% with 36-foot slips. And for 40-foot slips, 9% of the marina, or 64 slips. Next slide, please. Here is what we're recommending in terms of the configuration. And you can see that we are suggesting that you move away from supporting 20-foot and 24-foot and 28-foot slips to the sweet spot, which is moving up into 30-foot slips. And instead of 2% of the slips, offering that it's 13% of the marina supporting 30-foot slips. As you work your way down on the left side of this chart, you'll see doing 75 slips to support 34-foot slips, which is about 14%, and 38-foot would be supported by 113-foot slips, or 21% of the marina. 42-foot slips, you can see we go up as high as 106%, 106 slips for 20% of the marina, and 20% of the marina again for 46-foot slips. 58%, we're just not a big boat marina, and we start to work that down to 11%. Next slide, please. So we've mapped this out a little bit, and this is for discussion purposes and to illustrate what we're looking at now in terms of the configuration of the marina and what we have on the shore side and on the marina floor. And while we performed this study, we met with all of the tenants on the marina floor to talk to them about their future needs. So we met with Anthony's Restaurants. We met with CSR, who does a fabulous job down there. We met with the Quarter Deck and Ken, and to understand where he wanted to go, to understand some of the amenities. And the city has, in addition, been looking at other opportunities for a small hotel or other type of things that would increase the taxable retail sales and other areas. One benefit we had out of all of this is many of you have been down to the marina, have seen the beautiful row of brand new shiny Ranger tugs arrayed on the dock. And when we met with Ranger Tug, who was they're friends of ours, they've been working with the Wagner Guide for years, and immediately they saw an opportunity and immediately turned around and rented 200 feet of dock space, and then increased that to 300 feet of dock space. And they declared that this was a game changer for their business, to have their boats down there ready for people to step on the boat, go out for a demo ride, or when a new boat is completed and brought to their delivery center up on the Pacific Highway, they bring it right down to the Des Moines Marina, launch it, and the customer can fly in or drive in and step on board their brand new boat. So it's been a fantastic opportunity for Ranger Tug and their parent company, which is called Fluid Motion, and Cutwater Boats. And I think there are more opportunities for Ranger Tug to be involved with the rebuilt marina. And they're a company that we would want to spend more time with to understand what their needs would be and do a little business development with that, as we've done already. Next slide, please. So this slide is a diagram for discussion purposes, where we wanted to say, what might this all look like? And we showed, and this is for discussion purposes only, this is not a final recommendation. We're going to have some more meetings with the DMMA and tenants and talk about what's the right configuration of these docks. And in particular, I'm pointing out that you'll see we've reduced the covered moorage to roughly 40%. We just, for discussion purposes, left end dock as open moorage. That doesn't mean that's the recommendation, but that's something we would discuss. And then we started to look at other buildings. And in the middle of this diagram, you see number 11, a large block. And we see this as an opportunity with what we call an adaptive purpose building. And we're going to talk more about this because we see an opportunity where a lot of needs could be covered in this building. It's going to be a real challenge for the architects to put this together and serve multiple purposes. Next slide. So this adaptive purpose building is we see building a 2 to 3 story building where the dry sheds currently are. And we're assuming that those boats would move into our other dry storage. So we're not going to take away completely that dry storage capability, but we're going to do it more efficiently. We see this building having a step-down design where it would step down in 2 or 3 steps in size. And that building, and that the step down would allow us to have better view corridors and better views over the marina towards the water and the boats. The building would house the harbor offices, the bathrooms, showers, laundry. We see the opportunity for more restaurants, specialty shops, marine-related businesses, offices, and boat dry storage. So we really look at this building as functioning a lot of different needs. And it is going to be a challenge to build this correctly. And then next to that building, we see special event space, including the farmers market, and an opportunity where that event space could support boating clubs when they come to visit the Des Moines Marina, and other types of functions. Next slide. So what are the recommended next steps? Well, right now, to get to some of the answers of cost and how this would all come together, we need to begin the design and architecture process. And with that, to begin to define out of this conceptual work that we've done, how these different structures, the docks as well as this adaptive purpose building, can meet the needs of the Des Moines Marina. We see that we would like to start the permitting process as soon as possible. And for the adaptive purpose building, we see the opportunity that that permitting could move faster because it's up online. And then we see the tenants within that and building that building with the revenues from that starting to support the dock rebuild process. So we'd like to get going on that sooner rather than later. We also see going to the next step of this design as being able to pin down exactly what the cost is going to be for open versus covered moorage. And we see an opportunity that with that cost, we'll sit down with the tenants who really desire open moorage, covered moorage, and begin to talk about what the moorage rate will be for that covered moorage based on its cost, and then determine the interest in that level. As we've noted, that covered moorage is going to cost 80% to 100% more to build it. So it's a luxury that Des Moines has had, and it's not clear it's affordable in the process. So we want to incorporate that boat storage so we're not abandoning those smaller boat owners and make sure we understand that cost. And then we want to begin to market to potential tenants for the building so that we can actually look at what the revenue stream will be to support that building and the future building of the new docks. So that is our recommended next steps. We've spent over a year now going through studying the marina, studying the market, studying all of the things. So we're in a very good position to work with the community and the DMMA as well as the city to understand needs and what the costs are related to that. And in this cost going forward, we see that we also are going to build into the moorage rates and the cost the next step, and that's the plan for building the rebuilding the marina 50 years from now again. Unfortunately, when you have a structure in salt water, it takes, and weather, it takes a little bit more wear and tear. And we want to plan right from the start that the marina is going to need to be rebuilt in another 50 years and begin to develop the funding for that in the future. Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Council, just a couple other slides here. I do want to clarify one thing in Mark's presentation. When he referred to the seawall and the bulkhead, he was speaking of the southern bulkhead, which would be along most of the docks running south to towards Anthony's. He wasn't talking about the north bulkhead work. So once we finish the north bulkhead there, we have to kind of complete the inside the marina bulkhead work. So I just wanted to clarify that. I've already mentioned to you kind of the schedule for the next month, working specifically on getting some feedback and comments on this report. Throughout the rest of the year, what we're planning on doing in May and June is starting some of that preliminary engineering and architectural work that Mark mentioned. We are hoping to issue our draft master plan in late July, introduce that to the tenants and marina stakeholders and have some discussion and outreach in August. We will update and issue our final draft in September and then hold public hearings in October for adoption of the master plan in early November. So that's kind of our schedule and next steps. And again, all of the reports and presentations are available on the Des Moines Marina web page. And at this point, that concludes our presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Mayor, if I may. Excuse me. So it's important to remember, I think, that this is the culmination, at least at this stage of the process, of working with Mark and his team that came from recommendations from the DMMA leadership. And we met with Mark and Todd Powell and Ken and Bill Linscott and a few others who had recommended that we undertake a strategic assessment of the marina, and they recommended Mark. So that's worked out great. If you have questions, that's fine, but we will also be bringing this back in May for a more thorough discussion with council, and because council is going to be the one to weigh in on expenditures related to capital improvements and to the plan that we ultimately adopt, or that you ultimately adopt for the city. So I just wanted to make that, and I thank you, Dan, so much for creating the context to look at some of these issues relative to the policy implications, and we'll be following up with those as well. So Mayor, thank you.
Just real quick, let's see, did I see, yes, I saw JC Harris. Are there any other, Tracy Buxton? Okay, so I'll go with JC and then I'll go to Tracy.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, wow. I've got questions. I'll try to, I can take the answers offline, but just for now, can this accommodate all the masted boats? Okay, I mean, is there going to be enough, are there going to be enough small docks for the people who've got the 32, 36 foot sailboats that can't be put in dry storage?
Great question on that. Yeah, we do still plan to have the docks that are down by Anthony's, which would be open. That's where we have most of the sailboats right now.
Okay, what generally is the lead time on all of this permitting? I mean, is it really like 2 years, 5 years? I mean,
yeah, it's at least 2, probably closer to 5.
So my question then is, let's say market conditions change in 7 to 8 years, okay? Can you rebalance the slip mix without going through a whole SEPA process or some other permitting deal, or is it, you know, every time you change any slit aspect of the slit mix, do you have to re-permit? I guess is my question.
No, we wouldn't have to re-permit, and that's the beauty of kind of the tune-up of the master planning work. So we have, basically when we go to rebuild the dock system, we'll have to do the permitting likely for all of the docks. And so the size of the slip really doesn't matter as long as the amount of water that you're covering doesn't change.
Okay,
That's really what.
So you can cut out a couple to accommodate some guy who's got a ginormous cat, you know, or whatever, without having to go through any kind of, you know, lengthy permit process.
Hopefully that would be the case, yes.
Okay, so, and finally, if you eliminate covered moorage, is there any market analysis that says that you'll still get the uptake from, you know, these larger boats? In other words, if you take away that luxury good, does it, you know?
Yeah. Great question. And I want to just clarify, it's not that the city would take this away. It would be that we either can't get it permitted, which is likely the case, or it is so expensive that the boaters they will refuse to pay the cost of covered moorage in the future.
Sure. And last but not least, it seems to me like this whole proposal, it reminds me of like my neighbor who, you know, he got a larger mobile home. So then he had to have a truck to pull it. And then he decided to get a new house to fit the bigger truck. And I guess what I'm saying is that it sounds like you're leading with the adaptive purpose building, when, you know, that seems to be the thing that's going to get built first. And is there any way to break it out into it giving us the choice to only do the docks, which are the thing that are time sensitive, truly? Okay, I mean, with, you know, if cost was not an issue, but it's the docks that actually, you know, need to be done now.
Yep, that's a fantastic question. And I can quickly point this out that as Mark mentioned, we have about $7 million of debt debt service that we can issue coming up here in about a year. We have current debt service that'll be paid off at the end of this year. So we can reinvest, resell some bonds and do dock replacements to the tune of about 7 million. That'll get us 3 or 4 docks, probably closer to 3. And that by issuing the bonds for 7 million, that'll take us at another 20 years to pay that 7 million off. And in the meantime, there's no new revenue coming into the marina to pay for the other dock replacements. Zero. So I'm all ears for any ideas on how to generate more revenue for the marina, because as you saw in the condition assessment report, we have to replace all of those docks within about 10 to 12 years. So we have a serious problem coming at the marina, and if the docks don't get replaced, we have to take them out of service.
No, please don't misunderstand me. The electrical, the docks, I totally get it. I'm just wondering if there's a way to make this at least hypothetically more a la carte, so that we can choose the items that we want. It sounds like this is being presented as an overarching kind of a deal, and I would feel more comfortable being able to have those individualized options, at least theoretically. So, okay, yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here with a bit of a response to that question as well. There's probably 3 factors that are significant. One is that we could keep some of the revenue from the dry storage sheds by incorporating that storage into a building. The second thing is that could be a multipurpose building. And just 2 examples are, that could be an available location, the adaptive use building, for example, farmers market, all weather facility. The other thing is that if the harbor master's office, which is highly desirable by the private sector for a restaurant or something else, this building could house the harbor master's office, maintenance, everything else. And finally, one of the most important considerations that we're working on is to assure that this building, this adaptive use building, be integrated into the marina steps and into the dynamic of redevelopment on the land side in addition to on the water side. So there's multiple, when you see adaptive use, there's multiple dynamics to this particular approach. And we'll share more with that with council as we move forward.
Okay, I have one last quick thing I forgot. So how far out does your market forecast horizon go? Is it adequate to say that you can judge the markets 5 years from now, 7 years from now? Where do things get murky? Because you're assuming that basically it's going to get bigger.
Yeah,
Well, you know, we've gone through a significant change with obviously COVID and the economic situation. But as many of you know, the economic situation has not slowed down boating. More boats are being built, more boats are being sold. It has surprised all of us in the industry. And we know there's not enough marina space already in Puget Sound. And it's very hard to build a new marina. So based on that, we're feeling fairly confident that for the next 10 years or more, there's still going to be quite a bit of demand for marina space.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. It's the best, most comprehensive presentation I've heard yet. I appreciated all the information. I was reading through the report, and one of the reports that talks about grants available from the boating facilities program and also the boating infrastructure program. Do we have any information on our eligibility for those? And if we do, once they're granted, it sounds like they're granted every 2 years, is eligibility available again once you have been awarded one of these grants?
The voting infrastructure grant, you are correct, Councilman Buxton, is every 2 years. We applied for one for the new improvements for our dock guest moorage electrical program and received that one. Cool. There's two of the big grants. There's the grant Big 1 and Big 2. 2 is for up to, I think it is $250,000, and it's to help with 28 and above type vessels. It's hard to get it for permanent moorage as much as it is for guest moorage, but it will be something we'll be investigating.
Great, thank you.
Yes, keep in mind also that you don't have to request the grant for the entire project.
Right.
You can do it in phases, so you can ask for a grant for planning and permitting. Another couple years, you can ask for a grant for the phase 1 of the construction, phase 2, phase 3, etc. So yes, you can reapply for each step in the process of your development.
Okay, I see Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
So really quick, I just want to talk about the additional facility you're talking about, the store boats and multi-uses and so forth, which I really like. Do we know, or will we know in May, how many more docks we can build faster by adding that revenue to the enterprise fund?
No, we won't know by May. I think we're just now starting to put together some recruitment for some architectural work that can help us with that. That we may be able to begin that work in May, but that will help us. We'll have the information, maybe midsummer, that can help provide better timing as far as the capital reinvestment into the dock, into the docks as part of that. And part of that work is just to do a sensitivity analysis to determine, is the assumption that we can actually gain revenue out of that structure, is that actually realistic? So we need to go through that here in the next few months.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. The one point that I would like to make, yeah, this is probably one of the best presentations we've seen dealing with the specifics needs of the marina. And it's a little eye-opening when we're talking 7 to 12 years and we're talking the dollar amount. But I also like the fact that you're proposing a phased approach where we can start backfilling revenue or adding to revenue as we move through this. This is long overdue. We all know that, and and I'm not coining this phrase, but we all know as this community has referred to the marina many, many, many times as the jewel of the city. It's time that we take care of it. So I'm delighted, and I want to thank Mr. Bunzel. I think you've done an excellent job. And Michael, I really appreciate this presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I think
Thank
you can't give too much credit to Scott and Dan. And, we got a world-class consultant. So we were, there's the trifecta of trying to get it right. So thank you.
And I appreciate you not letting me overlook Scott and Dan. Scott and Dan are amazing, and they always come through for us. And I want to say that, Dan, I appreciate even your candor saying, if we don't do this, we've got zero revenue, we got 3 docks, we got 20 years, what are we going to do? And Scott, you're right on board with the same thing, letting us know that you're looking at various other sources. So, I mean, this is the dream team. Let's get it done.
We all appreciate everybody's help, and Katie and everybody and all council and stuff. It's going to be a good project.
Thank you, Mayor. Should we move on?
You still have the microphone.
I'm sorry. Should we move on?
Does that complete your city manager report?
No, it doesn't. It completes that portion of it.
Okay, you're on to your next portion.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to ask Beth Ann to say a few words. And primarily what she's going to talk about are 2 things. The first is an award letter received by the city. And the second is some language in Moody's Investor Services summary of the financial position of the city. And both of those are, to preempt Beth Ann somewhat, these are good news. So Beth Ann, with that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Beth Ann Rowe, Finance Director. Very pleased to let you know that the Government Finance Officers Association has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Des Moines for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2019. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read the report. The certificate is the highest form of recognition in the area of government accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. So I'm very happy to say this is our 3rd year in a row for receiving this award. And I can't thank the departments and my staff for all the hard work they do in putting the financial statements together. So thank you. Okay.
Beth Ann, do you want to move on to Moody's?
Oh.
I think there we go.
Tracy has a question. Do you want to wait or?
I would like to wait until you complete your presentation and let questions come in at that point.
Okay, thank you. So also good news is Moody Investor Service provides us an annual comment on the City of Des Moines' financial position and our credit overview. They've given us a credit position, or they've noted Des Moines' credit position is very healthy. It's a AA3 rating, is equivalent to the median rating of AA3 for cities nationwide. The notable credit factors include a robust financial position, a negligible debt burden, and a mid-range pension liability. It also reflects a solid tax base and a healthy wealth and income profile. So on our finances, it's giving us the city has a very strong financial position, which is favorable when compared to the assigned rating of AA3. And I'm just going to kind of go down to the end. Our economy and tax base, they state the city has a very strong economy and tax base. So I'm very pleased to say this is very favorable in our annual comment from Moody's.
Okay, thank you, Beth Ann. They also noted in there that our fund balance was above the national average for
Yes.
cities, and that's in the midst of COVID. So that's something I think we can also. But council, this is just a reflection of the amazing leadership of Beth Ann and what a great staff she has, and how they're helping us move forward on the ways that support exactly what the previous presentation was about relative to the marina and everything else, finding resources so we can move forward as we need to. So thank you, Beth Ann. I'd like to introduce Susan, who's going to give you a brief update on growth targets for the city. And this is part of a larger process that we'll be engaged in. And Susan will go into what the different jurisdictions and sequencing here is. Susan?
Before we get started, Susan, if I could interrupt you for a second. We have a question related to the finance, and I wanted to address that before we switch to the next topic, if we could.
Sorry.
And that's Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I am incredibly impressed with this. And I think that this, somehow a synopsis of this would be very nice for a press release. I feel like our community needs to know how hard we have worked. And this is an incredible thing, that coming through a pandemic to get kudos like this financially. I think something like this breeds trust out in the community for what our staff is doing. So I'm asking if that's possible somehow to put something out there.
Councilmember Buxton, it's already been released. It was, I just looked over it, our amazing city clerk and communications director, and she has released that press release.
Awesome, thank you.
And Councilmember Buxton, I'd just like to add one thing, we're essentially at AAA or AA3 Standard & Poor's. There's one more rung to get to AAA, and as we go through the process of releasing bonds for the marina, we will be applying for that designation, and that designation, it all fits together. Because what's going to happen is with that designation, and in fact where we are now, which is a 3-step upgrade from where we were 5 years ago, the cost of money is reduced, and we're able to put more of the bond into the marina improvements as opposed to paying interest. So it all works together.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Buxton and City Manager Matthias. I want to turn the microphone back over to Susan Cesar, our Chief Strategic Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, City Council. I'm going to talk to you tonight about growth targets, and I think Bonnie has the presentation. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about is first a little bit of background about comprehensive planning in Washington State, Vision 2050, and something called the growth capacity analysis, and then a little bit about the growth targets process, some preliminary results that have come out of that process, and what the next steps are. But before I get into that, I want to really make sure to thank both Denise Lathrop and Jason Woike, and they have done a tremendous amount of work, very detailed analysis for this. So thank you to both of them. Next slide, please. So just a little reminder about planning in Washington State. Starts at the state level with the Growth Management Act. And then regionally, Vision 2050 by the Puget Sound Regional Council, and Councilmember Buxton participated pretty actively in that process. And then going further down the food chain, King County updates the countywide planning policies to be consistent with both of the above, the Puget Sound Regional Council Vision 2050. And the growth targets are actually part of the countywide planning policies update. And then once that process is complete, that will all feed into our local comprehensive plan update, which is due in 2024. Next slide, please. So just for some context and history, the last time we engaged in the growth targets update process, we ended up with a growth target, a housing target of 3,480 new units for our current comprehensive plan, and an employment target of 5,800 new jobs. Next slide. And starting in that process, we have engaged in something called a growth capacity analysis. And this is a detailed look basically at every parcel in the city. And the map to the right is just one small section. And each of those parcels was identified and examined for its zoning and future development capacity. The methodology was determined by King County, and they are the lead in this process, and all the city's data, flows into that process. This work began in February of 2019, and it was designed to answer basically two questions. What growth has occurred in the last planning period, and where could additional growth and how much be accommodated? Next slide, please. Some of the findings of that study is that between 2006 and 2018, the city of Des Moines grew by 413 housing units and 859 jobs. And we did see that there was an effect of the recession that was around 2008, region-wide in the patterns of growth. We do anticipate that for the rest of our current planning period, that growth will be much greater. And we know that because we've got projects in the pipeline or recently completed. And so doing all of that analysis, we have a capacity currently under our zoning for around 7,359 new housing units and around 2,295 jobs. Next slide, please. So Vision 2050, the regional planning that has recently occurred, and that was adopted, I think, in around October of last year. And the forecasts for that process show that the Puget Sound area will need to accommodate around 4 million people and 2.2 million jobs by 2050. And King County's share of that is 50%. So there's a lot of that growth will occur in King County, 50% of the population and 59% of the job growth. So in that document, Vision 2050 assigned each jurisdiction to a regional geography, and Des Moines was assigned a high capacity transit community, primarily due to the light rail and also our bus rapid transit. And those communities together are expected to accommodate about 92,000 people and 40,000 jobs. Next slide, please. So we have given the Economic Development Committee updates on this growth targets process in October and again in January. And at that time, when we spoke with the Economic Development Committee, our initial preliminary targets for Des Moines were around 3,700 housing units and 3,800 jobs. As that process has continued, there's been a little bit of refining of that, along with King County, working in concert with them and also with our other high capacity transit communities. And what is now the draft targets would be around 3,800 housing units and 2,380 jobs. So at a staff level, these seem to us to be appropriate because they, were able to accommodate mostly these things with little adjustment, and they appear to be achievable for us. Next slide, please. So what happens next? The King County countywide planning policies are in the process of being revised to be consistent with Vision 2050. And one of the sections of those countywide planning policies include the new growth targets for all the jurisdictions. And that review draft was released on April 5th, and comments are due on May 5th. The link there will take you to the group of documents that this consists of. And I would request that if any council members have areas that they'd like us specifically to look at as we examine the countywide planning policies for potential comments, please just send those comments to me and to Denise Lathrop. The Growth Management Planning Council of King County, which is a group of elected officials from different King County jurisdictions, will meet and discuss these in May and June. And then the city councils in King County will be asked to ratify the countywide planning policies update, including the growth targets later this year. And then eventually that data will feed into our comprehensive plan, which will be updated due in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then I'm happy to take any questions.
I see Councilmember Bangs.
Thank you, Susan. That was a really good presentation. I think my question is more around the employment. So when you're looking at those employment numbers, are we talking about employment within our own city or just employment period?
We are talking about employment within our city. And, it's kind of a complicated calculation and methodology that King County, they actually examined our history and what kind of job generation happened in our past planning period, and figured out a way to project our capacity. So yeah, it will be our commercial areas, our mixed use areas that will generate the jobs, our job target.
And these are for our citizens, or just an increase in employment for those companies?
But it could be, it doesn't say who will be filling those jobs. It's just the fact that there will be a job created by the business that is a new business in Des Moines.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. The only comment I'd like to make is that, years ago when we were not able to rub two nickels together and we had a series of challenges, it's a good thing that we fixed those to a great extent, because otherwise we wouldn't even have the development that we have today that puts us on track to meet those targets. And I don't know what that outcome really would have meant in the long term, but it just shows that this team rolling up its sleeves and doing some hard work has really, really paid off. And again, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If there are no other questions, we'll move on to the last item. And the last item tonight, I want to talk with you a little bit about, and then I'm going to turn this over to Brandon for a enhanced description. On consent is an item to move forward with landscape design at Van Gasken. And I want to talk a little about kind of the context of this. We have, as we develop the Marina steps, the plan at the moment, subject to approvals by council and financing and all of that, is to create a traffic calming pedestrian crosswalk from the top of the steps over to Fifth Avenue, which is where Overlook 2 is. And so we have three kind of dynamics there. We have the Van Gasken property itself, we have Overlook 2, and we have Fifth Avenue. And there's been, the Van Gasken was complicated by some cultural considerations that we had to account for, and which now appear to be relatively solved. So we could move forward with that. At the same time, there's always been, and I used to live in the building across from Fifth, so I watched this. There was complaints from the neighbors that there were activities occurring in the park that were illegal, and that there was insufficient lighting, insufficient cameras, and all of that. And so this is not on the agenda for tonight, and I'll ask Brandon to kind of go into it with a little more depth. But what we're possibly going to propose to council, and in fact will propose on a pilot basis, is to close Fifth Avenue just north of the first driveway there and turn that into a pedestrian access and integrate it with the Overlook 2. And one of the complaints about people doing illicit things are these sort of semi-parking spots that exist along Fifth Avenue. There are 3 or 4 of them, and really only a Fiat could park there. They're too small, so then they stick out into the roadway, and they cause problems at night where people go up there and they party and they have music and so forth that's loud late. And then the next piece would be to integrate Overlook 2 into the Van Gasken property. And so by creating sort of a regional dynamic where we could have appropriate lighting, where we could place cameras, and we want to talk with the neighbors and just kind of get their concerns about doing this, there may be a really much more comprehensive solution to our movement forward on Van Gasken. And also for that whole area to be part of the walking, accessible pedestrian dynamic that we're creating for our downtown with the alleyway undergrounding, with the improvements to 223rd, the Urban Creek is what we'll be going through there with bioswales down to the Marina steps. So we're pretty excited about that. I think Brandon just talked a little about it, but we haven't come back to you regarding Van Gasken for a while. And we're excited that we think we've overcome the cultural challenges, and which, we're grateful that they exist, but they're also have to be, kind of responded to. And so we thought we'd give you a little more regional possible look at what could happen. So Brandon, with that, I think you've got a visual.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Good evening, council. While Bonnie is bringing up that image, great. I also hope you had the chance to look at the packet tonight, and specifically, I think it's on page 29, the conceptual view of the Van Gasken Park. Really excited to see that, and looking forward to that. But just want to go over a couple quick things to add to what Michael was saying. What you see here is sort of a graphic representation of one of the elements of one of our TIP projects. As Michael described, there's several downtown enhancements planned. This was in specifically Project 24, which is described as downtown Des Moines improvements. But this particular element in the description talks about creating a cul-de-sac at the end of South 222nd Street there. So that just kind of gives you a high level view of the ultimate plan that Michael was trying to portray. You can see the Park Place condos driveway would come directly there to Cliff Avenue, and the park area could be expanded and enhanced. And so that's sort of the long-term goal. But we think that we may have a solution just to maybe address some of the more immediate concerns with security. And Bonnie, if you could show the next image, that we're going to try to work with your approval this summer, similar to what we sort of did at the entrance to the Marina at 227th. We're looking at what we could fit and what we could do on a relatively low cost element with more channelization devices, some curbing, and you can see they're basically creating kind of a beta version, a beta test of this closure using striping and channelization, and so it could be implemented relatively cheaply. It would then provide some of these security enhancements as well as controlled vehicle traffic, and so we're just we've been brainstorming, and this is kind of a quick sketch we created today as to where we'd like to go with your concurrence, and I'd be happy to take questions. And in that same image, we would also be allowing the Park Place condos to access Cliff Avenue. And so, yeah, any questions?
I saw Councilmember Nutting, and I believe I saw Deputy Mayor Mahoney. So,
Yeah, I was just a little confused. I think I understand now. I didn't want to pull something from the consent agenda for more discussion or kicking the can down the road. It sounds like this was just a further explanation of what was going on down there and to get us moving in the right direction. So I think my questions have been answered.
Okay, I'll go to Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and I do recognize Councilmember Buxton's hand as well.
I was more comments in this particular case. I think that you taking the Van Gasken landscaping and then incorporate these other things that need to happen in a short-term and long-term approach is awesome. I think that based on my conversation with a lot of the residents that surround that community, they would definitely be supportive, and they would probably be willing to help, say if they needed cameras or something on top of their buildings or something like that. So I could see some great partnership here. So my compliments to you, staff, for finding the solution, thinking holistically. Very good. That would have been my concerns on this before, but now I don't have them. Thank you.
Councilmember Buxton.
Exactly. I think, thank you, Mayor. I think lighting and safety were my two concerns as well, talking about landscaping. And it sounds like the decision on the consent calendar is separate from lighting and some of these safety concerns. But what you're asking tonight, so I want to clarify, are you asking for the council to agree to say, yes, we would like you to move forward and explore this option that you just presented? Is that the question tonight?
Council member, I think that there's two parts to what you're saying.
Okay.
One, this approach, which we would anticipate as a pilot, to the degree we'll need council approval to move forward, we'll come back to council at some point in the future. This tonight is just specific to extending the ability to complete certain actions on Van Gasken itself.
Okay.
If I may add, yeah, anytime I think we look at even temporarily closing a road, something of that nature, we would want to bring that back to the council for concurrence. If we're going down the wrong road, let us know right now. But I think this is an idea we'd like to explore a little more, as it addresses, definitely signs and cameras helpful. But I think when you take some steps to really limit or manage access to certain areas, that's you get a lot. You can move the needle a lot more.
I think it's a solid strategy, especially start out as a pilot program. There are a number of things that you can do. I do agree with Deputy Mayor Mahoney. I think there are a lot of people down there that are very much concerned about the security of their properties with this park growing. And so I think, managing things with planters, lighting, security, cameras, partnership with the condominiums and the other folks down there, that's just the way to go. And that is, I think if you do it, if the way you guys are going about it, I feel like we're going to go down this path in the right way, because if you don't, it's going to be a long-term challenge.
Brandon, any comments on the consent? The item on consent?
No, other than I think as Councilmember Buxton explained, that really is more an action to finish off the design now that we've added the platform and some of the other permitting related to cultural resources. So kind of two separate items, but because it's at the same location, this was a great opportunity to talk about security and access.
Okay.
And Mayor, that concludes the admin report.
Okay. Michael, you and your team have been extremely busy, and that was one heck of a report and I really appreciate it. Thank you. So at this time, I will ask the clerk to please read our consent agenda. Tara,
Sorry, I was muted. Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, resolution 21-022, temporary road closure authorization. Item 3, Van Gasken Landscape Design Task Order Amendment. Item 4, Sexual Assault Awareness Month Proclamation. Item 5, Parks, Rec, and Senior Services Plan Update Consultant Contract with AHBL. Item 6, surplus property vehicles. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I see a hand. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to pass the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nutting, seconded by Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Is there a council member that wishes to remove an item? I see a hand from Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to pull item 3.
Okay. All right, with the exception of item 3, all those in favor of passing the consent agenda, please raise your hand until I call your name. Okay, I see Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bangs, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. So this passes 7-0. Okay, and at this time, I will turn the microphone over to Councilmember Harris for item number 3.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't take a lot of time on this. I only pulled it because I just cannot vote for anything that leads to the removal of the Van Gasken house. I think it's the wrong move, and I just can't vote for it. So that's all I got.
Okay. So at this point, is there someone who would like to make a motion for item 3? Councilmember Nutting. You have to unmute and you've got it.
Yeah, forgive me a second though. I move to approve the formal task assignment 2020-2022 Amendment 1 Attachment 1 with KPFF Consulting Engineers in the amount of $65,165.88 to complete the final design of the Van Gasken Park and authorize the city manager to sign the assignment substantially in the form as attached.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Bangs. All those in favor, please raise your hand until I call your name. Okay, I see Councilmember Buxton, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bangs, and myself. Opposed? I see Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Martinelli. Passes 5-2. Okay. At this point, I will read the proclamation into the record. Now, therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the month of April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the city of Des Moines and encourages all citizens to join advocates and communities across the country taking action to prevent sexual violence. And this takes us forward to new business, the introduction of items for future consideration. Is there anyone who wishes to bring something forward? I see Councilmember Martinelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Given that we do not allow public comment in our committee meetings, despite the fact that that is where much of our policies are formulated, I would like to put on a future agenda a rules change that requires committees to have a public comment period, similar to what is done in cities like SeaTac. And I do not believe that it would be the right move to push this off until we have a rules change meeting for the sake of giving the public as much of a voice as possible. And I do understand this may increase the time of our committee meetings, but a lot of our meetings, like our public safety committee meeting today, was not even 20 minutes long. So I don't really think that's an issue. So I would like to put that on a future agenda.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask if there is support to move the item forward. I see J.C. Harris and of course, Councilmember Martinelli. Seeing no other support, we don't have 3 items, so our three members that are supporting this. I see a hand from Councilmember Buxton. I believe she'd like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. So I misunderstood the question asking for support. I thought it was going to be more like a first and a second and a vote. I think that the discussion has great value. So I would be in support of moving the discussion forward, whether it is remanded to a committee or however. I think there's value in the conversation. So I support this. Thank you.
Can you clarify? I'm kind of confused. Are you moving? I'm confused, Councilmember Buxton.
Well, what's in front of us? This is interesting. What's in front of us is Councilmember Martinelli would like us to bring forward to a future agenda a council rule change that brings a public comment as a mandatory part of committee meeting agendas. He has, the key is you need support of 3 council members per rules to bring this forward. And it looks like we have Councilmember Martinelli, of course, and then Councilmember Harris, and it looks like we have Councilmember Buxton. So at this point, I will be meeting with the city manager to look at bringing this forward on a future agenda for a conversation, because we have 3 individuals who support it per council rule. We have a Councilmember Harris.
So, I mean, I guess that's perfectly fine. You know, we can, put off the mechanics until the agenda item itself. Forgive me, this is sort of a new flavor. So is there any other need for refinement at this point of the proposal? Or, for example, you allocated 10 minutes for, new business here. Or should that be put off? I guess I would defer to Councilmember Martinelli. Do you have any other, input as to how that discussion should proceed?
Well, I think that it's pretty straightforward what I'm asking. I think the mayor kind of laid it out pretty clearly that I would like us to mandate that there's a public comment period at the start of all committees, similar to what we do in our main council committee meetings. And I'm not sure if that would need to be clarified more or not. I would, like to see that on an agenda as soon as possible, because I do think it's an important issue, and I thank Councilmember Buxton for agreeing to push it forward. But I personally am fine where it stands if we just move it forward in that regards, because I do think it's pretty straightforward what I'm asking, and if there's anything more, then that's fine.
I was just wondering if you were looking for an actual rule change, or if we, or if it would just be done the way we did new business.
I will have to yield to the city attorney, actually. But from what I understand, Councilmember Martinelli is asking for that to be part of our council rules.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's where we address procedures for committees. So it would make sense to formalize it if that was something that the council wanted to do.
Well, at this point, we're not taking a vote on it. It has been.
Yeah, if that's, yeah.
To bring to a future agenda. And I will work with the city manager to look forward to getting that on at an appropriate date.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, seeing none, that takes us forward to our board and committee reports. And tonight we start with Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off with the committee reports. On March 25th, we had a Economic Development Committee meeting where we reviewed the possibility of a $4 an hour hazard pay for the essential workers. After careful review, we determined from the economic, financial, and legal reasons we would put the topic on hold for the time being. And that was pretty much all that was discussed there. Then we rolled into our Municipal Facilities Committee meeting, and basically, other than the Redondo restroom replacements, which just discussed on possibilities on where the restrooms would be placed and the design. We also were updated on the Marina master plan, which you guys got an extended version of it, and which was very well done. Thank you. And the Gasken update, which was pretty much what you guys got this evening too, which was, I thank staff for both of those updates. And then just on a personal level, children are back in school. I know it's been a year. I always preach about this back in October's. We didn't get to do that now. Those yellow lights are flashing 20 miles an hour in school zones. Children are killed every year. You're in charge of a 2-ton vehicle. Please be safe driving down school zones and watch out for the kids. And they'll be playing in the roads. We live in neighborhoods that where they run out into the streets after balls. So just be cognizant of speed limits in the neighborhoods and all around town. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my first reaction to the Marina presentation, which was great, is that this is like fast. It is a tremendous amount of money and just it's really a huge undertaking that, you know, even though the city may have been thinking about it for a long time, this period of consideration is very fast. And that is concerning to me. We basically waited till, you know, the night of the test. And I sure wish we could slow down somehow, because this is something for the entire city for quite a long time. I attended a DESC meeting and tour in Burien. This is basically housing first. It's affordable housing. I know that it is extremely worrying to a lot of people, but I was cautiously impressed, and I encourage my colleagues to check out that building in progress, and also they have other projects throughout the area. It's something that we should all learn about, you know, not to sound lectury. And I guess fine. Oh yeah, I attended the Highline Forum. I'm not the representative, but the outgoing facilitator, Ms. Schulman, said that she was glad that the era of labor versus management was over, meaning that it was better that there was more cooperation between the cities and the port. And I just want to say that I want it to be labor and management. It is labor and management. Their management were labor. We do not have a proper community voice at the table at this moment, because in addition to the marina and all the other stuff we got going on, there's this little thing called the SAMP, the expansion of the airport, that nobody is talking about at the Highline Forum or at START. Finally, I got tons and tons of messages and calls about the city currents thing and the passenger ferry, and people say, what do you think? And I say, it's a fabulous marketing piece. I'm just thinking about how much it would cost me as a candidate to reach every home, business, and PO box throughout the city, including postage. Okay, a 2-page color flyer. Fabulous work from a candidate standpoint, I guess. The other thing that people asked me was, so I don't recall anyone ever taking a vote on this. And I said, neither do I. Maybe I was napping. Where's the presentation? I am still waiting to see data of any kind on this proposal, what it would mean for the city, plus and minus. And I don't think that any member of the, a year ago to the day, I was called out by my colleagues for representing the city. And I just want to say, it is a drag to me that we are pre-announcing something without presentations, data, or those little things we used to have called votes. It's undemocratic, and I really object to it because the deal is the public is so uninformed and so desperate for any kind of economic development that they will eat this up with a spoon. And it's just, it makes me so sad. That's it.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So I attended the most recent Farmers Market board meeting, and the Farmers Market is excited to be moving forward this year into the same space as usual. And they're keeping track of all the protocols that will need to be put in place. So I'm excited for this summer to be able to have that market going again. As always, though, they could use sponsors. If you feel in your heart to donate to the farmers market, that would be great. They would appreciate it. You can go to their page on Facebook. I also attended a South King Housing and Homelessness Partners board meeting, and they're working to assemble their advisory board so that they can dispense resource. So that's the last major step in organizing the administration of this 10 city partnership. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of work and resources going to come out of that partnership. I also am on the Growth Management Policy Board for PSRC, Puget Sound Regional Council, and a major portion of our discussion last week was in regard to an interesting protocol that counties use to protect rural lands. It's called a transfer development rights. So the short of it is, if you want to preserve rural land, you can take some of the density permissions and move them into an urban area, and developers can take advantage of that. What they're trying to do now is allow people to, these credits they're called, from, let's say, to cross counties. So if you were to transfer some development rights from Pierce County, potentially they could be used in King County. There's a lot of conversation over how people feel about this process. And I'm still looking into it more myself, but just a heads up, that's coming down the pike. And it's in response to the Growth Management Act and protecting rural lands. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Martinelli.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to state that I also found the passenger ferry article to be in bad taste. That being said, the only comments I have today are just to thank the staff for the hard work they did on the presentations that were given. And that's all that I have for today. Thank you.
Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Mayor. Liaison to 2 committees and a chair on 1. Diversity Advisory Group held a meeting, and we had a pretty good agenda. It was mental health field response video that we all reviewed. Also, Highline College working relationship update from David Menke, and I believe we're still waiting to get his notes from that update. A lot going on at Highline College. Also, our next meeting, we will be having a hate crimes and homicide and violent crime unit update, King County Sheriff's Office. As a liaison to the advisory board for the police department, we had a presentation on the body cam update footage, which will actually be presented to council in July. So that will prove very interesting. Again, it's in test mode. There's 2 in the field. What they're finding is that the battery life isn't quite as robust as was led to believe. Shifts are 12 hours and it's just not lasting 12 hours. So we'll hear more about that. Electronic alarm program is set to deploy. So that'll be an online registration for anyone interested in registering their alarm program. And it's essentially to help reduce false alarms. One question came up and it was about derelict properties. And at our next meeting, code enforcement will provide an update on that because I know we're all I'm kind of wondering still about the area up there on 216th and 28th. So that'll be coming up as well. Had public safety emergency management meeting this evening. The chief provided all the updates and the one was the vaccination status. In the state of Washington, as we all know, April 15th, 16 and over, anyone can get that vaccination. King County has delivered 1.2 million doses. There are 42.3%, I believe, that have had their first shot and 25% fully vaccinated. However, South King, as we know in many of the other places in this country, unfortunately in South King County, we have a higher COVID infection rate. So we really don't have stats on why that is. Maybe we can get that at the next meeting. Another one was the SWAT update. We are part of that SWAT team. There are 40 teams. And it's a good thing that we are because we are able to be involved and also take part in all of the training that occurs for the SWAT. We basically have 1 to 2 calls in Des Moines a year, which is really, I think, low. I don't know. The chief can speak to that. But essentially 64 calls for service, I believe, over 2020. The next one was Valley Independent Investigative Team. And that's an opportunity for many cities in King County, probably South King County as well, to provide objective investigations for any crimes that are committed that require that kind of an investigation. I believe typically that would be, correct me, Chief, I'm trying to think of the word, high crime or a death or something like that. But it provides objective, independent review of it. And we have and I believe each city should have community members that are involved in that. And we have 4 community members in the city of Des Moines that, when needed, would be able to provide also some input to that investigation.
Conclude your remarks.
Sorry?
Well, you're at the 5-minute mark. I need you to conclude your remarks.
Oh, thank you. I need to get the chief to also provide report on that.
He's
Oh, gosh.
advised me of that. So at this point,
Oh, he has? Then that
yeah,
concludes my report.
let me bring him up. Do you want to sit? Okay. Due to COVID protocols, we have to move around a little bit. One moment, please. Chief, you have the floor.
Okay, good evening.
Go.
I wanted to update on the co-responder behavioral health grant that we are one of 8 jurisdictions that are part of. And our very own Nicole and Rochelle actually wrote the grant, the city of Des Moines. I'm very happy to say that yesterday was our soft opening. So we are actively participating, taking referrals, and that is up and going. They're still in the process of hiring personnel. So we're using existing King County mobile crisis team members to fill in until we can get the new employees hired and trained up. So very exciting news to be moving forward on this project. So thank you.
Okay. And then the next up is Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to respond to the comments by Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Martinelli. You know, it's funny because just the other day I received a card from our King County Council member talking about COVID and some other things. One thing is I am the chair of the Transportation Committee. I represent us regionally at Skate Board. So I am kind of the voice of transportation and what would be the council's designee to speak. So when I was asked by the city manager to be part of this article, I readily agreed. Now, as far as being a surprise, that shocks me because for several years now, I can remember the yacht club in the Argosy where we talked about foot ferries and the marina development. It's shocking to me that some appear not aware of those kind of things and what we were talking about. So this hasn't moved fast at all, this process on the marina or the foot ferry or all that comes with it. But the bottom line is that it was well received. And the PSRC report clearly talked about the #1 route being Tacoma to Seattle. And they even mentioned if Des Moines could be added, that would be a bonus. The one they mentioned for Des Moines went to Southworth, which was irrelevant really in this need. So the opportunity to bring people here and eat in our restaurants and visit our town, and for our residents to commute in a cool way to Seattle or visit Tacoma, somehow comes off as a bad thing, confuses me because this gives us hope. It brings another dimension to what we could do, and that was about the visualization. There's still testing to go and things like that along the process, but you got to think bigger and wider. But as far as a campaign issue, no, this is nothing like that. And I resent that remark. I'm more about moving this city forward. That's what I've come here to do. And that's what I'll continue to do. So thank you.
City Manager Matthias, you've been involved in foot ferry discussions for before you were even our city manager, if I'm not mistaken. And isn't that a public-private partnership that you've been discussing with the community for a considerable amount of time?
Mayor, so the evolution of that, I know it's kind of striking to hear that this comes as a surprise. And I can only think that for all the times Councilmember Harris, prior to being a council member, came to the dais and raked us over the coals and then left. He didn't stick around for the rest of the meeting to hear what was actually going on in the city. So I attribute his lack of knowledge to that. But we've talked about passenger ferry service. I remember probably 4 years ago, the first time I had a meeting with Kevin Clark, who's the president of Argosy. I've met with other private ferries, had discussions with some of the private providers. We commissioned a demand analysis. Kevin said it would make sense for us to try to figure out what did the market look like. So we commissioned a study with the folks from Minneapolis. I think most of the people who were on the council previously, we all met up at the hotel and had dinner and talked with them. And Mark Bunzel was there, Robert Holmes was there, and Liz Diedrich was there from Minnesota, who did the analysis. So then they went ahead and did the demand analysis, which is on our website, which we will bring to council. And we've been kind of constrained by COVID as to what we could talk about and what we could actually do. But we will be bringing that to council as part of the process of the waterside redevelopment that you heard about tonight. In the future, we've been authorized by council to go out with an RFQ for the Marina redevelopment, boutique hotel, all the efforts that we made on 223rd to, or we will make on 223rd to turn it into an urban creek and enhance the water quality release of stormwater into the sound as part of our stewardship in the relationship between the city and Puget Sound. And so we've since had a number of discussions with people from Pierce County Commission, with the private sector. Peter Phillips is helping us with some of the connections with passenger ferry service. We've looked at the logistics. We're hopeful that if we can put the pieces together, we could bring to council the opportunity to do a pilot program this summer for passenger ferry service up to Seattle. We're on the map because of access to SeaTac Airport. And everyone who's heard about this, so the demand analysis speaks for itself. So I won't speak for the community, but the demand analysis showed overwhelming support for ferry service from Des Moines to Tacoma, from Des Moines to Seattle, and reasonable fare, elasticity in terms of people being willing to pay, $11, $12, $13, whatever it turns out to be, to make that happen. We've also looked at the electrification of ferries to try to enhance our resilience, sustainability, and kind of that is one of the underlying themes for Marina redevelopment. So, I think it was unfortunate that COVID kind of stood in the way of us going forward on a lot of these, but now's the time where we're picking up the pieces and starting to move forward. And I can't imagine who had not heard of this, especially a council member who no doubt went back and listened to all of the previous council meetings on live stream to catch up with what was going on. So you'll hear more about it. I also, at some point, Councilmember Harris, you and I are going to talk about the SAMP because you've mischaracterized our relationship with that as well. Thank you.
I just want to state that I have nothing against the idea of discussing a ferry. My issue was with the fact that the letter was done in bad taste, as Councilmember Harris said, by a candidate in an election year. It could have been our city manager.
I will say right now, you don't have the right to jump out there. Your report is done. We are in reports. City Manager Matthias was just simply following up with facts, not on an opinion. This will take me forward to my report. On March 24th, we had a ribbon cutting for a new business in the city, Creole Soul. And they are just north of B&E Meats on the alley side of what will be behind the theater and so forth. It's wonderful food. It was a great ribbon cutting. Many council members attended. The owner, I think at this point, he's opening Thursday through Sunday. And as weather improves, he will extend the days that he's open. I will say for those people who know what Café du Monde is and what beignets are, that is a real treat that he brings together on Sunday, but it's wonderful food. On the 25th, we did have the Economic Development Committee that's already been addressed. On the 27th was the Destination Des Moines virtual wine festival. And although I was only able to do a limited participation, our Deputy Mayor Mahoney did jump in And I don't know if other council members were there, but I appreciate it, and we'll be getting some more fabulous wine this year. Along with that, there was mention of a Highline Forum, and again, the host city was Burien. We did address some operating procedures. We had a 2020 annual report from START, and we had some START and forum members' reflections. I unfortunately was not able to stay to the end of the meeting. So that's what I have to report on those things right now. I also want to bring forth some really awesome things that have happened since we met last time. And I'm going to, I'm just going to start with the top. Our city clerk and communications director, the fabulous Bonnie Wilkins, was recognized as City Clerk of the Year. And we will talk about this more, but there is no one more deserving, and she is absolutely amazing. Everything that comes through this city that I can think of, Bonnie finds a way to juggle with. And she has been outstanding. And I'm grateful that she was recognized as City Clerk of the Year. She deserved it, without a doubt. We also received the GFOA Certificate of Achievement for Excellence that for financial reporting that Beth Ann Rowe just presented earlier. But the thing that's actually extremely significant is this is the third year running. This is from 20. Now, granted, the dates are a little behind, but it's 2017, 2018, and 2019, and these are all the current years being reviewed. That's outstanding, and I just have to thank Beth Ann, her team, and all the department folks that she recognized, and City Manager Matthias, because what they do is they bring all this together into a single budget, and that is one amazing feat. And then they have all their reports to generate on time, and outstanding work. I'm not done, folks. I got one more. Actually, I have two. We received a letter from a community member, and it talks about our police agency, one that I have consistently been proud of, but I want to share it. Just a portion of it that says, I wanted to let you know how much I've appreciated the help I received from your officers since 2019 in dealing with a mentally ill person that lives nearby me. They've probably all interacted with this individual and their equally challenging guardian on numerous occasions. Every single one has been so kind, patient, professional, and courteous. I just want, just what you want in a local police force. Given what's going on in the country right now, I'm proud of at least my city. We have a police department that cares about its citizens and treats them all with respect. Please feel free to share this. I think it's important that the community know that we've received the notes like that. And then, of course, we got the AWC Wellness Award. And when 50% of our employees are participating in trying to maintain good health, yes, AWC does recognize us with the potential of, with a 2% reduction in our healthcare going forward. And that, again, is very significant. And it shows how committed our staff are to not only taking care of themselves, but also taking care of the finances of the city. So I think that's just amazing work since we met last time. And that takes me to the end of my report and the end of our meeting. What I would like to note is that our next meeting will be on April 15th, 2021. It will be a work study. And at this point, I am looking for a motion to adjourn. I see Councilmember Nutting.
So moved.
And I see a second by Deputy Mayor Mahoney. All those in favor, please put your hand up until I call your name. Councilmember Martinelli, Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Banks, Councilmember Buxton, and myself. We are adjourned. Thank you for attending.